Welcome to Sharing the Road with Bicyclists, Everett's bicycle friendly driver course. After completing this course, you will have a better understanding of how to share the road with bicyclists and the most common crashes involving people driving cars and people riding bikes, as well as how to avoid them. We will discuss what it means to share the road with bicyclists and why that is the best practice. We'll show you some bike infrastructure that you're likely to encounter, what it means for a bicyclist to take the lane, and why a person riding a bike may need to do so. Throughout the training, we will do some exercises called legal or not that will test your knowledge of the rules of the road as they relate to bicyclists and motorists sharing the road. We'll talk about the safer behaviors for bicyclists when riding. And once the video is complete, you will have the opportunity to take an online exam to reinforce what you've learned. Consider the transportation modes you use to travel to work or around your neighborhood. Are you a pedestrian? Do you ride a bike or a scooter? What about a skateboard? Do you drive a car or a large truck? Do you ride the bus or light rail? Most people use several methods to move around your community. Regardless of the transportation methods we use, we are all people and we all matter. There are three major takeaways from this course. First is that a bike is a vehicle, and when bicyclists use the road, they are subject to the same laws as other road users. Second, people on bikes fare best when they act and are treated as drivers of vehicles. Bicyclists should drive their bikes, much like they would a motor vehicle. Third, bicyclists are vulnerable road users and should be treated with the same space, consideration, and caution you would show to a slow moving vehicle. This leads to our discussion about bike infrastructure, bike facilities, and bike amenities you may see around town. Bike infrastructure is used to communicate the direction of travel. They show bicyclists where and in which direction to ride. For example, the bike lane symbol in the bottom left indicates that there is a bike lane next to the vehicle lane and shows the direction bicyclists should be riding in the bike lane. Where to stop at intersections. For example, the bike detection symbol on the top left shows bicyclists where to stop so that their bike will trigger a green light at a traffic signal. To all road users, where they can expect to see people on bikes, bringing more predictability to roadway interactions. For example, the shared lane arrow, or SHARO, in the top right shows bicyclists and vehicle drivers that they should share the same lane, while the bottom right photo shows bicyclists where to ride in the roundabout. Bike infrastructure includes bike facilities, which provide a place for bikes to ride. Examples include trails, or safety features such as bollards where trails cross the road, wayfinding signage at a level that bicyclists can see. This confirms that bicyclists are on a designated bike route. It provides directions, such as turn signs, to stay on the bike route. And these also provide distances to key destinations along the route. Bike infrastructure includes amenities at destinations to make it easier for people to choose biking as a mode of travel. For example, bike racks and bike lockers allow people to travel to a destination knowing that they can secure their bike when they arrive. Bike racks on transit help people connect to other modes of travel. The curriculum from this course is data driven. We've looked at statistics in our community as well as Washington state to focus on the issues that are going to make the biggest difference and potentially save people's lives. For all crashes in Everett, 1.5% involve a vehicle and a bicyclist. Of all crashes involving a vehicle and a bicyclist, 7.8% caused a serious injury or fatality to the bicyclist. 41.8% occurred on a roadway or shoulder. 19.6% occurred in a crosswalk. 29.1% occurred when the bicyclist was on a sidewalk or other walkway, and 7.6% occurred on a designated bike route. From 2016 to 2020, for bike and vehicle crashes in Everett that caused a serious injury or fatality, 50% occurred on a roadway or shoulder, 31.3% occurred in a crosswalk, 12.5% occurred when the bicyclist was on a sidewalk or other walkway. Notably, zero occurred on a designated bike route. In Washington state, some common errors that lead to bike and vehicle crashes include the driver was exceeding the speed limit, the driver or the bicyclist was distracted or impaired, the driver failed to yield to the bicyclist was riding against traffic. For vehicle and bicyclist crashes in Washington state on roads with posted speed limits greater than 25 miles per hour, 51% of the crashes caused a serious injury and 78% of the crashes caused a fatality. The driver was impaired in 2% of the crashes that caused a serious injury and 24% of the crashes that caused a fatality. The driver hit the bicyclist and fled the scene in 12% of the crashes that caused a serious injury and 13% of crashes that caused a fatality. The driver failed to yield in 17% of crashes that caused a serious injury and 11% of the crashes that caused a fatality. What this data means: driver error was a significant factor in serious injury and fatal crashes. People riding bikes are vulnerable road users. Without the metal box around them, they are more likely to suffer serious injury or fatality when involved in a crash. Providing bike facilities saves lives. This brings us to our legal or not exercises. Test yourself. Do you think the actions in the following scenarios are legal or not? For this first legal or not exercise, look where the bicyclist is riding. Is that legal or not legal? If you guess not legal, you are correct. This person is riding against traffic on a roadway, which is not only against the law, but also dangerous. Riding against traffic is a common cause of bike and vehicle crashes in Washington state. Now, what if the person is riding on the sidewalk and going against traffic? Is that legal or not legal? In Everett, it is against the law to ride on the sidewalk in downtown, but legal everywhere else, despite the direction of travel. Even though sidewalk riding is legal in most parts of Everett, it is often not the safest choice. This is the case because other road users are often not looking on the sidewalk when driving. They are focusing on the roadway. That is one of the reasons that we encourage bicyclists to ride on the road and not on the sidewalks, except when the sidewalk is a side path designated for both bicycles and pedestrians. Even in this case, bicyclists should use extra caution when riding on these side paths. Let's take a look at another scenario. This is a picture of a group of bicyclists riding through a roundabout. Is what they're doing legal or not? If you answered legal, you are correct. But what about the fact that they're riding in the middle of a travel lane, you might ask? Is that legal? The answer is yes. Bicyclists may legally ride in the vehicle travel lane for many reasons. And in the case of a roundabout, we even recommend that bicyclists do so to avoid being passed by a vehicle. In roundabouts, like the one pictured, there is not enough space for a motor vehicle and a bicyclist to use the roadway side by side. Let's talk about taking the lane and reasons why bicyclists may do so. Taking the lane is a term used to describe when a bicyclist moves into the vehicle travel lane, riding in the lane. By law, a person riding a bike is allowed to take the lane and even to impede traffic. A bicyclist may choose to take the lane because it is the safest place to ride at that moment in time, or to place their bike over sensors in the roadway to trigger a traffic signal, or to make a left or right turn. As we said in the beginning, bicyclists should drive their bike much like they would a car and should complete turns much like they would if they were driving a car. This requires the bicyclist to move into the left or right lane to do so. In some places, it is illegal to ride on the sidewalk, and as we discussed before, sidewalk riding is generally not as safe as riding on the roadway. Regardless of why a bicyclist takes the lane, they should be shown safe driving behavior like any other vehicle. Okay, Let's test your knowledge of the rules of the road for bicyclists again. Is what they are doing legal or not legal? Before you answer, look closely at the roadway. Notice that there is gravel in the shoulder. Washington law states that bicyclists should ride as far right as is safe, as deemed by the bicyclist. If a bicyclist feels it is unsafe to ride to the right due to debris in the road or for other reasons, they may take the lane to ride safely. But what about the fact that these bicyclists are riding side by side? Is that legal or not legal? In this case, it is legal. In Washington state, bicyclists can ride side by side, but no more than two abreast. Let's talk a little more about taking the lane. As you saw in the last example, a person riding their bike may opt to take the travel lane due to debris or other obstacles in the shoulder or lane. A bicyclist may also take the lane if the roadway is too narrow to be safely shared with a motor vehicle. As a motorist, you are required by law to give a bicyclist at least 3 feet of space when passing. The 3 feet is measured from the rightmost part of your vehicle. This is likely a mirror, and on some larger vehicles, can extend quite far from the body of the vehicle. If you are towing a trailer, the trailer might extend beyond the body of your vehicle, and then you need to take this into account when passing a person on a bike. Avoiding the door zone is another reason people on bikes may choose to take the lane. Another reason bicyclists may take the lane is to be more visible to other road users. There are many scenarios where taking the lane is the safest option for bicyclists, but it can be especially helpful in congested areas or when a person on a bike wants to prevent positioning themselves in the shadow of another vehicle and risk being the victim of another type of crash that we will discuss in the following slides. The door zone is the area beside a parked motor vehicle where the door extends when it is opened. This area should be avoided by bicyclists because drivers often don't check for bikes and open their doors unexpectedly, causing the bicyclist to crash into the door at their full riding speed. A bicyclist's average riding speed is 10 to 12 miles per hour, but skilled riders can often reach more than 20 miles per hour. Taking the travel lane is one way to avoid this scenario. It is important to note that there are many places in our community where the bike lane is painted right next to the door zone, or no bike lane exists on the roadway, and there is not enough space for a motor vehicle to pass a bicyclist unless they are riding in the door zone. In these instances, a bicyclist should either ride to the farthest left part of the bike lane or take the travel lane fully to avoid the door zone. It is also best for a person on a bike to avoid weaving back and forth from the travel lane to the parking lane between parked cars. A bicyclist is more predictable if they ride in a straight line and maintain their lane position. As a motorist, drive behind a bicyclist who needs to take the lane in order to avoid the door zone until it is safe to pass with at least 3 feet of space. So, how do you open your vehicle door to minimize chances of hitting a bicyclist? Motorists can use the right hand trick to increase awareness of nearby bicyclists. By opening the door of the vehicle with the right hand, the driver is positioned to see oncoming bicyclists. Now, let's discuss a common crash we see involving a person on a bike and a person driving a motor vehicle. This crash is called an approach turn or left cross. This crash takes place when a left turning vehicle turns in front of a person on a bike who is proceeding straight through the intersection. This type of crash often results in serious injury. Can you think of any reason why this might happen? There are many factors that may contribute to this type of crash, including the motorist may misjudge the speed of the person on the bike. The person driving the car may not see the person on the bike because they are in the shadow of another vehicle or on a hill. Lighting conditions may be such that it is difficult for the person driving the car to see the oncoming traffic clearly. This can be especially difficult at dawn or dusk. How can you avoid this crash? As a motorist, make sure to check carefully for all traffic, including bicyclists, before turning across traffic lanes. Don't underestimate how fast a person on a bike might be traveling. Remember, some bicyclists can travel speeds of over 20 miles per hour or faster if they are heading downhill. Keep in mind that a bicyclist may be traveling alongside a larger vehicle and may be difficult to see. As a bicyclist, be aware that turning traffic may not be able to see you if you are riding next to a larger vehicle. In some situations, it may even be best for you to take the lane to increase your visibility to other road users. Use caution at intersections and be aware of turning vehicles. Both bicyclists and motorists should be aware that at dawn and dusk, the lighting conditions may affect others' ability to see you. Here's another legal or not situation. Use what you've learned so far and see if you can determine whether what the bicyclists are doing is legal. What about the people driving the motor vehicles? Notice the bicyclists are riding single file and they are riding as far right as is practical. What the bicyclists are doing appears to be legal. What about the motor vehicle drivers? In this case, they are passing the bicyclists in what appears to be a legal and safe way. When passing a bicyclist, motorists are legally required to give bicyclists 3 or more feet of space when passing. Motorists may not cross the center line if they can see a bicyclist or pedestrian approaching from the other direction, a bicyclist or pedestrian is present and passing would be within an unsafe distance due to the width or condition of the roadway, shoulder, or bicycle lane. Another common crash we see involving a person on a bike and a motor vehicle driver is called a right hook. This is when a motor vehicle driver turns right across the path of a bicyclist, causing a crash. The right hook may take place for several reasons. A motor vehicle driver may misjudge the speed of a bicyclist and complete a right hand turn in front of the bicyclist, turn in front of a person on a bike who is waiting at an intersection at a red light or a stop sign, or not signal a turn and cause the crash. A bicyclist who is riding on the sidewalk and rides into the intersection may experience a right hook because the motor vehicle driver is not expecting someone on the sidewalk, whether a pedestrian or a bicyclist, to enter the roadway. Here are a few things you can do to avoid a right hook crash. As a motorist, treat a bike lane like other travel lanes. When completing a turn, signal and check for bicyclists, including in your blind spot. Once it is clear, move over into the bike lane before completing the turn, just like you would a motor vehicle lane. By owning this space before you make the turn, you avoid a potential conflict or crash with a bicyclist. If a bicyclist is present and you want to make a right-hand turn, it is generally better to slow down and keep the bicyclist in front of you. Let the person on the bike clear the intersection and then complete your turn. Remember that in Washington state, a bicyclist may pass cars to the right when safe to do so. As a bicyclist, you have a few techniques that you can use to avoid being right hooked. You can choose to take the straight through motor vehicle lane and position yourself in a way that makes it obvious that you are traveling through an intersection rather than turning. This is an especially effective method when the bike lane is positioned on the right-hand side of the right turn lane. Watch for signals on cars so that you can anticipate when someone is planning to make a turn right. You can also make eye contact with drivers and make sure that you are seen. Recognize that it is legal and preferable for a person driving a car to use the bike lane as a right turn lane, just as they would with a motor vehicle lane. This helps the driver communicate their intentions to bicyclists and helps prevent a conflict. Know that people may misjudge your speed. By now, you've probably got this down, so let's take a look at this legal or not. Are the bicyclists riding legally or not? What about the person driving the car? Is that legal or not? The bicyclists are riding as far to the right as is practical. There is debris in the shoulder that would make it unsafe to ride further to the right. What they are doing is legal. The motor vehicle, on the other hand, is not giving the bicyclist enough space when passing. Look how close the mirror of the car is to hitting their riders. The bicyclists are likely to experience the wind blast from the vehicle traveling so close to them. There are no vehicles, pedestrians, or bicyclists approaching from the opposite direction. The person driving the car can legally cross the center lane to give the bicyclist the 3 required feet of space when passing. The motorist's actions are not legal. Here are some reminder tips when passing a bicyclist. Check in your blind spots for people on bicycles. You know it is clear when you can see the person in your mirror. Motor vehicle drivers are legally required to give bicyclists at least 3 feet of space when passing. When driving larger vehicles or vehicles with trailers, keep in mind that the mirrors and trailers can extend a significant distance from the body of a vehicle. Allow extra room when passing a bicyclist. Wind blasts from vehicles can throw a bicyclist off balance. You can help prevent a person on a bike from crashing by reducing your speed and giving them plenty of space when passing. Here are a few other situations to keep in mind. Remember that 78% of fatal bicycle and vehicle crashes in Washington state occur on roads with speeds greater than 25 miles per hour. Always follow the speed limit. Distracted driving is a major cause of crashes and is illegal in Washington state. Don't text or talk on your phone. It could save a life. Drive predictably and do not show unsafe courtesies. An unsafe courtesy is when a motor vehicle driver is trying to be polite but inadvertently does something illegal or unsafe. An example of this is when a person driving a car stops in the middle of a vehicle travel lane with no stop sign or traffic signal to let a person on a bike turn left. This is problematic because other road users are not expecting the person in the car to stop, and it may cause a crash from any travel direction. When you are driving, it is best to be predictable and take the right of way when you have it and give the right of way only when it is legally correct to do so. Another safety issue to keep in mind is where you park your car. It is against the law to drive or park in a bike lane. Parking in bike lanes is not only against the law, but it also causes a safety issue for a person on a bike who is then forced to swerve into traffic to get around parked cars. Look for another place to park your car that is legal that will help keep bicyclists safe. We would also like to highlight the fact that motor vehicle drivers need to use extra caution when driving in areas where children are likely to be present, such as neighborhoods and in school zones. Help keep kids safe by reducing your speeds and being on the lookout in higher traffic areas where there are likely to be children. Before we move on to the next section of this training, let's review the major points we've covered in the last few minutes. Treat bicyclists as drivers of vehicles. Passing a bicyclist can be done safely when using a few of the tips discussed. Attempting to squeeze by a bicyclist is illegal and can cause a crash. You are legally required to give at least 3 feet of space when passing and be mindful that you may need to give more space when driving a larger vehicle. Motorists may not cross the center line if they can see a bicyclist or a pedestrian approaching from the opposite direction, a bicyclist or a pedestrian is present, and passing would be within an unsafe distance due to the width or the condition of the roadway, shoulder, or bicycle lane. You know it is safe to return to your lane when you can see a bicyclist in your mirror. As a part of this training, we would also like to point out a few things that bicyclists can learn as a part of bicycling education taught by many bike organizations. Bicyclists learn when and how to take the lane. Bicyclists fare best when they act and are treated as drivers of vehicles because this makes them more predictable. Ride as far to the right as is safe and move away from the right-hand side of the road when it is appropriate, such as when changing lanes to complete a turn or when it is unsafe to ride on the right. Bicyclists are expected to obey stop signs and traffic signals just like every other vehicle. The exception to this in Washington is the safety stop or Idaho stop law. The safety stop or Idaho stop law says that bicyclists can treat stop signs as yield signs when there is no opposing traffic and when they have slowed to a reasonable speed. If there is opposing traffic, the bicyclist must stop at the stop sign. The exception does not apply to traffic signals or behind a school bus. Although counterintuitive, this law is safer for bicyclists because it allows them to clear the intersection faster where they are often more vulnerable. Driving a bike means that they need to communicate to other road users their intentions when turning and where they position themselves in travel lanes. Bicyclists by law are required to signal. There is an exception to this. If it is unsafe for a person riding a bike to remove their hand from their handlebar to signal, then they are not required to do so. If a person is not able to signal with their hands, they use an audible signal such as a bell or say on your left or stopping. These are common hand signals. Signal a left turn by extending the left arm straight out. A right turn can be signaled by bending the left arm up at a right angle or by extending the right arm straight out. A bicyclist should also signal when they are stopping, which is done by bending the left arm at a right angle and pointing the hand down toward the ground. To wrap up, here are a few main points to remember when sharing the road with people on bikes. Bicyclists fare best when they act and are treated as drivers of vehicles. Remember the tips that we shared earlier about avoiding these common crashes: left cross crashes and right hooks. Bicyclists may need to take the lane and can legally do so for a variety of reasons, including safety and to position themselves to be predictable road users. By law, motor vehicle drivers must give bicyclists at least 3 feet when passing. Motorists may not cross the center line if they can see a bicyclist or pedestrian approaching from the opposite direction, or a bicyclist or pedestrian is present and passing would be within an unsafe distance due to the width or condition of the roadway, shoulder, or bicycle lane. Remember to check your blind spots and be aware when driving larger vehicles, as they can create dangerous wind blasts and may also require more than 3 feet of space when passing bicyclists. Bicyclists are vulnerable road users. Sharing the road is the best way for all of us to arrive efficiently and safely. We are all people trying to get where we need to go, and we all have the right to choose how to get there. This course was developed by the City of Everett and the City of Fort Collins Bikes, the Fort Collins Bicycle Ambassador Program, and Bike Fort Collins. You can find out more at everettwa.gov/bikes. Now that you've completed the bicycle friendly education program, you can take an exam to solidify what you've learned. Click this link, complete the following exam, and you can get a bicycle friendly driver sticker.